So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Andrea Tarr, and I'm the Communications Director at SCAN, Senior Citizens Activities Network. And we're talking about something a little bit different today. If you know anything about SCAN, we've talked about diabetes for a long time, but today we're really addressing kind of a holistic situation, a mind, body, spirit. And who better to do that than Dr. Evan Rubin? And why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
All right, thank you, Andrea. I'm Evan Rubin. I am Medical Director of Visiting Physician Services. I've been with this group for more than 12 years, been the Medical Director for the last 6 or coming on 7 now. And I'm board certified in family medicine. I'm also an osteopathic physician. So a lot of my training and my practice is in a holistic approach to health and to my patients. And I'm very happy to have been asked to be part of this presentation today.
All right. Well, I think because you do kind of work in a holistic mindset that you are the perfect person to talk about this. And obviously there are a lot of physical aspects to diabetes, but we're going to focus on some of the other things today, the mind, body, spirit. But first, and we talked about this a little bit before, it just feels like there are so many more people these days that have diabetes than ever before. And, the numbers just in New Jersey alone are huge. And I wonder do you feel like this is a modern day situation? Was diabetes always with us?
Well, so that's a great question. And right here at the onset, I want to make a little bit of a distinction. And there are really 2 types of diabetes. There is what used to be called a type 1 diabetes, which is usually a childhood onset, a juvenile onset diabetes. And that is something that is really a disorder of the body's ability to really to produce insulin and to metabolize food without it's childhood onset. And that's really not going to be the focus of our conversation today. That's a separate thing. For their lives, they're required to have insulin right from the onset. Right. They can't really control that with diet. So that used to be called type 1, and we're really not going to be that's not going to be the focus of our talk today. The other one, to get to your question, is more of an adult onset, having to do with kind of the chronic influence of our diet and how much carbohydrates, how much processed sugars that we really take in on a continual kind of chronic basis that starts to lead to some of the changes in the body that we see and that we'll discuss further on. So there's twofold why we see so much of it these days. Like a lot of things that seem to be increasing in healthcare, one is a better system of testing and management and awareness has increased of these things. So that's one reason why we see more, is because we're able to kind of cast a wider net and really have a greater awareness of some of these things that otherwise maybe decades ago would have fallen through the cracks. Another reason, which is something that we were alluding to earlier, is the availability of whole foods, of natural foods, and the use of them has kind of fallen off, and it's been replaced by a great deal of processed foods that have a lot of filler and carbohydrates and added sugar for a couple of different reasons. One, taste. And if you get that hit of the taste, people want more of it. And that's what food companies want to do, is they want you to buy more of their product. And 2, it's preservatives and kind of shelf life and the ability to keep things for longer periods of time in transit on the shelves in people's homes. So it makes it, I guess, more convenient to have them around than having to go to the supermarket or a produce stand several times a week to keep fresh ingredients around. So that's another reason that I would say that's the main reason why we see a lot more of it, is just, that's what's around and that's what's being pushed for buy and to eat.
I'm sure years ago, a lot of people probably had diabetes, but it was undiagnosed because, as you were saying, we're testing more. We know more now. So probably years ago, people had it, just didn't even realize it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's true. Um, and but at the same time, I think it's legitimate that more people now have diabetes than had it ever before. And the cost, both in quality of life, in how it affects what we're able to do, and our other, and we're going to get to this, all the other systems of the body that are affected by diabetes, and the expense in healthcare, is soaring due to some of these things.
Hmm. Now, we talked, if you were with us before, Dr. Rubin and I had a very long conversation. So we're trying to remember it here.
We
And
talked it
again,
all out.
we did, but we're recording everything, and everyone will have access to this for, another time. And again, if you have any questions, put them right in the chat. So, we were saying, a lot of times you say you have heart disease, kidney disease, lung disease, and it feels like it's really just affecting a particular organ, whereas diabetes, it is it's all of you from your head to your toes.
Yes, that is true. And the reason that that's the case is because while if you have kidney disease, it's your kidneys that are mostly affected, or heart, you can point to those things. The way diabetes affects you is it affects the lining of your blood vessels. When your sugar levels are going up, and that's what diabetes
Yes.
is. Maybe we should explain that. Is Diabetes means increased blood sugar. And what happens when your blood sugar is higher than the balance your body's used to is it starts to deteriorate the endothelium, the lining of the blood vessels. And we have blood vessels everywhere. And it especially affects the tiny little capillaries, very small blood vessels. And those are seen mostly in the fingertip, the extremities, fingertips and toes. They're seen that feed the eyes, that feed the brain, that feed the kidneys, and the heart and the lungs, all the little blood vessels. And when they get affected, they lose their ability to bring nutrients to and draw wastes away from these end organs. And that's why we start to see deterioration and failure in some of these organs.
So we talk a little bit about control or lack of control, and some lifestyle components for diabetes that I want you to mention a little bit about that. I know for some people, they just feel that they have no control. I have diabetes, and oh my God, that's the end. But that's not true.
It's not true. And it is one thing that really is a distinguishing factor with this adult onset kind of type 2 diabetes, is that you really do have a lot of control, certainly earlier on when you're first told you're pre-diabetic, or the beginning of your diabetes stage, when you haven't had a major disruption or damaged organs, as opposed to there are certain cancers or autoimmune diseases or certain high blood pressures that have a large familial component to it, or certain traumas or injuries that you have. Obviously, it's difficult to have control of that afterwards. But diabetes is really something that we can control with the food we take in, and we can really improve our body's ability to use its insulin and to process things metabolically through exercise, as well as the foods we take in. And a number of other things that we can do in a healthy way can really influence, control, and sometimes completely reverse a diagnosis or a condition like diabetes.
Now, that's a really compelling statement, to think that you could completely reverse it with some changes to your lifestyle, because you certainly can't say that about every single disease. You would think that that would be reason enough that people would take back control.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I tell my patients all the time, and even patients, some of my patients are on insulin, and they've been on insulin for years or longer, And they think a lot of times, patients will think, well, once I'm on insulin, that's it. I'm always going to be on insulin. And it's really it's not true. You can transition from needing insulin regularly to only taking oral medicine, and then from oral medicine to not needing any medicine at all. You can even skip that middle step. You can go from just being on insulin to all of a sudden, if you can really get control and clean up a lot of the lifestyle decisions, you can really go to a situation where it's purely controlled by diet.
So what are some of the lifestyle changes that we might need to modify to get to that point where we can say, hey, we're good now?
Right. Well, and again, it's not a one treatment for every patient. It
Of
needs
course.
to be emphasized. It's something to discuss with your physician or a nutritionist, someone that is monitoring your care. So that I'll put that little caveat in there. That said, the more obvious ones, the ones that people may already know about, are avoiding processed sugars, right? So cookies, cake, whatever, cupcakes, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are sweets, that are treats, that are pastries, ice cream, things like that. Processed sugar is going to spike your blood glucose, and that is really not going to get you to the point of balance or reversing a situation. So really eliminating that, at least at the onset. When people say, well, I can't give up my this or that, a cookie a day, or, when things are better under control, you can have that cookie a day. It's the beginning to really turn the boat around. The analogy I give people is, let's say you're in a car and you've passed your exit. You've missed your exit on the highway, right? You can't just turn around or stop the car on the highway and go back. You have to continue. You're going to continue to go on, but you want to slow the car down. Then you can turn the car around, and then you can start going the proper way toward your destination. So that's the thing. You slow down what you're eating, and once you're there again, then you can be a little more, free with what you're doing. So eliminating processed sugars, and really eating whole foods, things that come in there, vegetables, fruits, lean meats, things like that. Really avoiding grains as much as possible. Maybe some whole grains are there, that is okay. And the amounts of those foods, other than fruits and vegetables, you really want to restrict the amount of something you're doing, because again, getting into a little physiology, the work, the inflammation and degradation of the lining of those blood vessels needs to be repaired. And a lot of effort and energy that the body has needs to go towards that. So the healthier the food you eat, the more nutrients and the less of the amount that you're eating will help divert all the energy that would go towards breaking down that food and digestion, and be able to go towards repair and stopping the inflammation. That's the whole thing. So healthy whole foods, fruits and vegetables, a little bit of whole grains, a little bit of meats, lean meats, lots of hydration, water, eliminating soda, obviously. And as we were talking about before, exercise, moving your body, movement, okay? And movement can happen anywhere you are for any length of time. Right. Even if you move for 30 seconds at the beginning, because maybe somebody has been sedentary for a long time or deconditioned for something. But just getting the body to start to move. I don't care if it's 30 seconds or a minute, but if you then recover and do it again later in the day, and then again, and you get into the habit and the discipline of doing something every day, you can start to reverse this process of inflammation and this process of needing certain things out of your food that you've been relying on, and getting it from the movement and freeing up your body to be able to heal in this way.
So I feel like you're describing, Dr. Rubin, small changes over time are going to make a huge difference in our diabetes situation. Huge. And even if you didn't have diabetes, by the way, obviously this is the better way to live.
Yes. And that's the thing that it's not just diabetes, like you said. I mean, taking these small changes, but in a disciplined, daily, regular, routine type of way can help you with whatever it is you're addressing, whatever function you feel isn't quite as great as you'd like it to be, whatever challenges or obstacles you feel are in your way. Addressing them in a small way every day, but being persistent with it will really start to move things. It'll reduce the obstacles. It'll make you make things that you want to do easier to do, and you'll find you'll be able to do more.
So one of the things that we talked about, and I feel it's what you're describing, is the idea of self-management. I mean, obviously, you're under a doctor's care. You should always be under your doctor's care. You're not with your doctor 24/7. Most of the time, you're home. You're living your life. So by being a self-manager and doing what Dr. Rubin is describing, which honestly doesn't seem like a very difficult thing, although I say that, but, we're all examples of do as I say, not as I do. And, I acknowledge that. But it tells me that something simple can make such a big difference. Again, your mind, body, spirit. So it's that taking control of your managing yourself.
Yes. And that's what I tell patients as well. I say, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. Right? The idea is a very simple idea, but when there's a lot of inertia, when we're not used to doing some of these things, even finding the time to do 30 seconds of movement a day seems overwhelming. But once you start to overcome that inertia and you change you take something that's simple and you make it easy, you build momentum. When you've done an exercise or a movement, let's say, for 5 minutes in the morning when you wake up, before you have your breakfast, when you do that movement or right after breakfast, and then the next day you do it again, and then you do it again. When you've done that 3, 4, 5 days in a row, your body and your mind starts to expect that's what we're going to do. And you ready yourself for it. You look forward to it. It becomes easier. Maybe at the beginning, doing it for 5 minutes feels like 25 minutes.
Right.
But maybe by the fourth or the fifth day, 5 minutes is over and you feel like you can go for 10. These changes start to happen without our even being conscious of it. It's a natural thing. Your body wants to move. It's just about overcoming that inertia. And the same thing applies to starting to change some of our habits when it comes to food. The way you feel, the way you think you feel by eating a sleeve of cookies or a sleeve of crackers or a bag of chips, and then not doing it. And then instead of doing that, you have an apple, and every day you have an apple, or you have a handful of grapes, or you have a pear or an orange or something like that. The way you feel after that is going to start to become the kind of expectation and what your body's craving and what your body's used to. And trust me, that's going to get that momentum going to a much healthier place.
And I feel like there has to be a mental game here, because you're doing this. You're saying, well, what's my choice, the apple or the cookie? I'm going to pick the apple because I know that if I do this every day, there is a very good chance that my diabetes will become under control, and maybe down the road, I won't even have diabetes. So I feel like you have to talk to yourself and play those little mind games, which are okay in this case.
Right. Well, you do, because at first, that goal that you're aiming for is a theoretical one. You don't feel it right away.
Yes.
I do actually eat apples every day. So I love them, and I love the way it makes me feel. So I do get an immediate hit from eating that apple. I just feel really good. I like the way it makes me feel. It doesn't mean I don't eat cookies, but anyway. So at first, there's a kind of an abstract goal there. Oh, eventually I'll come off my medicine. Eventually I won't have diabetes. But there are immediate benefits as well. You have to go through the process to feel them. It becomes less cognitive, less theoretical and abstract, and it becomes very concrete. You actually feel better. Digestion is another one that is going to be a big change. A lot of my patients complain about issues with digestion. And one of the big things that will change in a very short amount of time with more fruits and vegetables is a greater balance and an ease of function in digestion.
Mm-hmm. And it all makes sense. And what about being hydrated? Lots of people, unfortunately, don't drink nearly enough liquids. And I'm talking by liquids, I'm talking about water.
Yes. Well, that's really, when you talk about hydration, that's really the only thing that to talk about is water. That's huge too. Not only for digestion. Pardon me, we're moving because I need to charge my phone. So not only for digestion will hydration help, but like we talked about before, the physiology of diabetes is this degradation, this breakdown due to high glucose of the lining of the blood vessels. So what the water will help do is it'll bring nutrients to those inflamed areas that will help to heal the lining of the blood vessels, and it allows for the waste product to be flushed away. So the hydration is key to all of this stuff. So I mentioned before about stopping soda. There are patients that still drink soda, and obviously you don't want that for the sugar content. But it also, all the chemicals and other things don't really necessarily help with hydration. In fact, a lot of times they get in the way of the hydration. They end up, you retain it, and they prevent you from being able to flush things out. There's a lot of salt, sodium involved in that as well. So it's water, and one of the most genius packaging systems that was ever developed was the fruit and the vegetable, because they come with water already in them.
Yes.
So by eating those things, you're already getting a hit of water that helps flush out your system. They also come oftentimes chock full of fiber, which is another thing that helps pull things out and flush out the system as well, both the blood vessels and the digestive system. So you're really helping to your body to heal by eating those foods.
I see that there is a relevant question in the chat about drinking, not water. So the question is, can a person with diabetes drink alcohol?
Well, again, it's hard to make general statements here. There's a large audience, and for some people, especially if someone has an addiction to alcohol, they can't have it. They really shouldn't have it. But there are also different degrees, and this is one of the things I was trying to say about the car going, having missed the exit.
Yes.
You talk about there's a huge spectrum of illness out there, and depending on how far someone is from their health and their balance, it depends on how long it's going to take sometimes to get back to balance, and to what extent they can, be a little more forgiving in what they eat. How strict they are with the diet and what they're taking in. So for someone who, and just to give a little maybe education here, one of the things that we use in addition to blood glucose to determine the extent of someone's diabetes is called the hemoglobin A1C. And maybe some of you are familiar with this. You've been told for your doctors. And what a hemoglobin A1C is, it's the percentage of this molecule, that hemoglobin, that is saturated with sugar. So the lower your A1C, your hemoglobin A1C, the less diabetic you are. The higher you are, the more saturated the hemoglobin structure is with sugar, and the higher your blood sugar is, the worse your diabetes is, and the more likely you're going to have complications and extenuating disease. So all of those things said, if someone's A1C is under control, their blood sugar is under control, their other disease factors are well controlled, there probably isn't a reason that you couldn't have a moderate amount of alcohol, on a reasonable basis. Now, the more disease that's present, whether it's heart disease, other things like cancers and things like that, right, for which alcohol would really be a detriment to your body's ability to fight those things, you probably want to abstain until you get into a greater place of balance and your threshold is at the point where you can tolerate some of these things. Alcohol very rarely helps your health. I know there are reports out there about how, it can reduce some inflammation and can be good for either cognitive state or heart health and things like that. You're talking about a really narrow window of functionality there and help in all reality, and it's not for everybody. Okay, so all those articles that people like to read and get published all the time to for whatever reason, it's very important to understand it's a small window of usefulness and it's not for everybody. So that's my answer.
Okay, no, fair enough. And of course, if you read enough articles, you'll certainly come across an article that supports your idea.
Right.
So
tells you what you want to hear. Right.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's get a little back to the mind, body, spirit part of diabetes. And because there is a relationship with your lifestyle and there is a lot of issues with stress. Well, first of all, we're living in a stressful time. So let's talk about how stress and diabetes, what's the relationship there?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that the true answer is probably way beyond our ability to understand the body and health and a living organism. I think it's hugely extensive, and that has to do with stress in all aspects. It has to do with cognitive function. It has to do with blood pressure, heart disease, has to do with all of those things, right? Stress is this great unknown, and what we do know about it is a very small percentage of it. What we do know, like I said before, about the inflammation that's caused by high circulating glucose levels in the blood and the damage to the endothelium, right? It causes inflammation. Stress is a huge pro-inflammatory reaction function. So stress on top of a diabetes state, which is already inflammatory, is really going to contribute to the progression of illness and make more difficult the treatment of it. So some of the ways that we can address our daily stress to help us treat and reverse and eliminate diabetes, as we mentioned before, number one, I would say, is probably exercise without any complication, without any side effects other than
and that could just be a 15-minute walk, right?
Right.
We're not talking anything too crazy.
No, we're talking about movement.
Moving.
That's when I say exercise. That's what I mean movement, moving your body. So it reduces, it's anti-inflammatory, right? As long as your arthritis is in check and your joints are, we're talking about gentle movement, range of motion stuff, just overcoming the physical inertia of your body, just having to move through space. You can do it if those of you are in wheelchairs, you can do it in a wheelchair. One of the things we had talked before we started recording is the availability of support for moving in any aspect, any way you can imagine, is there on the internet.
Absolutely.
It's a pandemic, right? We're not, most of us aren't going to 25-person group classes at the gym right now. But on the internet, in the comfort and safety of your own home, living room, or even in a chair, or even in a bed. A lot of the patients I make house calls for are bedbound. We're still doing occupational therapy, still doing physical therapy, still giving them suggestions on how they can move their body. So if you're up and you're moving around, you can walk. There is so much available for movement. And again, it's just about doing something on a regular basis, whether it's a 30-second workout, whether it's a 2-minute workout, a 5-minute exercise. And one of the things that I mentioned that I tell a lot of my patients about is not to, tout any one thing over another, but there's something called yin yoga. And I know that yoga is a trigger and you think it's all kind of bendy stuff and very challenging, difficult, but it's called yin yoga. And again, before you go and do something like this, you may want to just check with, your treating clinician. But they're gentle, long, slow holds and ways of opening up parts of your body that you hadn't necessarily done before. And what starts as a local change, and it doesn't have to be in yoga. This can be anything. This can just be lifting your arms up over your head, or putting them out to the side, or gently turning your body side to side. You see all of these things that you can do, and look for them on the internet. But when it's what starts with what seems like a shoulder, a hip, a knee, an elbow, exercise or motion, when you do it for a while and your breath gets incorporated in it, it starts to become systemic. You can notice that your heart rate can change. Your ability to breathe in and out can change. Your kind of mood can change. Your posture can change. A lot of things can start to shift. And all that really is overcoming the inertia that has been present, and just beginning to get some momentum to move through your body of space, of freedom, of change. And it's contagious, and it's addictive in a good way. You'll want to do it again because you'll feel good. It perpetuates itself, so you'll be able to do more the more you do.
Right.
And what I like about it is it's gentle. The risk of injury is really minimal, if none. So it's a great way to start. Again, there are thousands of opportunities out there to search for on the internet. You just start with something.
The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So this is an opportunity. And I agree with you, Dr. Rubin. Online, there is so much information. If you haven't ever worked out and you work out for 5 minutes, it probably feels like quite a session. But you got to start somewhere, and maybe start with 2 minutes. And maybe by next week you can do 3 minutes, right?
Absolutely.
Just keep going. And I feel like that success, it's self-perpetuating. It makes you want to do more. You'll find that it's easier to get in and out of a chair, to just move around your house in general. But starting is the hard part.
Absolutely. Yep.
But now that's eliminating. Exercise or moving. Let's not even use that word. Moving is a great way to eliminate stress. And stress, we just learned, is a big problem for people with diabetes. And I feel like diabetes also has some social effects, because when we've been dealing with so many, I have facilitated so many workshops, and I don't want to go here because I can't eat this, or I don't want to, everyone's going to know I have diabetes, or, we're not even kind to ourselves, honestly. But I feel like we need, you and I, again, earlier, we talked about engagement, because so many of us have been isolated for so long. And this is another part of the problem, that mind, body, spirit. We need to get out, don't we? We need to engage.
We do. It's part of the human condition. We are animals that are part of a pack, and we like to be around each other, and we need that kind of connection. And the what you mentioned about food choices and being outed as someone who is either diabetic, or even watching what you're eating, wanting to be healthy, or watching your weight. It doesn't have to be that stated. You could just, and even like I said before, there's a spectrum of ways of eating. And if you're at a birthday party that's very special with somebody that you keep, whatever, celebrating a big event or something like that, and cake is presented, or a sweet treat is presented, and it would be awkward to have some, and you're relatively controlled, or you're moving towards control, and this is your one opportunity, have it. Don't make yourself crazy with having to be so strict. But here is an opportunity to look at portion control. You don't
Right.
need a quarter of a pie. We were talking before about the pandemic and being isolated, and whereas it may have been your thing before that you'd like to bake cakes or bake pies, and before you'd bake a pie and then you could bring it to a group of 12 people and everyone gets a 12th of the pie. Now you bake a pie and you eat the pie. That doesn't have to be.
We're not saying anybody out there is doing that, but this is theoretical.
I'm doing that. That's what I'm saying. Not every day. But what I'm saying is you can participate, if you love ice cream, have some ice cream. It doesn't have to be a 3-scoop banana split sundae. You have a little ice cream, and maybe it's not every day, and maybe here's another thing. If on Friday, I have this birthday party I'm going to, and I want to have a slice of cake, then maybe Monday through Thursday, you are especially good. You're especially tight on your control of what you're eating, so that on that day on Friday you can have that special treat that's gonna make you be part of the group. But the community doesn't always have to just be about food. I mean, like we talked about before about the exercise and the internet. If you have a friend or a group of friends that you want to hold, you can hold each other accountable. Did you do your 5-minute workout today? Did you go online? I had, there was this trainer that I found that was great, and you can have your community that way, and you can start having the friendliness or the sense of community, and friendship and engagement and togetherness, which again, really good for depression, good for cognitive state, to have that interaction. It can still be, you can still be through the safety of your home and not worry about, spreading virus and stuff, but you can still communicate and with your friends and do these things together and have it as a healthy activity that's at the core of it. I mean, those are all things that are possible, and they're all available. It's so easy today.
And, I'm going to go back to something we talked about earlier, which is self-management, Dr. Rubin. You can go out to dinner, go to a party, be part of events. You don't have to be defined by your diabetes, because you're managing you're managing your own destiny. That sounds profound, but honestly, we all are. So if you can learn some of those self-management skills, I think it would just make life a lot more comfortable. You don't have to feel that social anxiety that some people feel around any illness, actually. But because diabetes is so food centric, that is a problem. But of course, we need human engagement because, well, it is part of the human condition, and something that I didn't totally understand until I started doing a little research for our conversation today was really that diabetes can have a profound effect on your emotional health. So obviously, please talk about that.
All right, absolutely. So when we talk about diabetes, and even though we've mentioned how systemic, how kind of whole the effects are really throughout the entire body, when we talk about it as kind of an endocrine issue, right? It has to do with insulin, it has to do with glucose, it has to do with kind of that balance. But another aspect of the endocrine system are a lot of different hormones that are produced by the body. So there's always this, this balance between, we mentioned cortisol before, and insulin, and other neurotransmitters, other hormones that are produced by the body, like serotonin and dopamine. All of these things are in flux, and they're all influenced by each other. And serotonin, as some of you may know, is a big player in our mood. And how we, kind of feel about ourselves and how we feel about things in general, and our ability to initiate activity and make choices. So all of these things are very intertwined. They're very connected. We mentioned before about the effect on the brain through the damage of blood vessels and the ability for the body to clear itself, and that can affect our ability to remember and make decisions and things as well. So the tighter control we have over our blood sugar, the the greater our ability to kind of make good decisions about those things as well. The better we'll feel about things. And getting back to what you said before about kind of social isolation and fear about being in situations outside of the home where we feel we have better control,
Right.
whether it's about, I think I want to make sure that I'm not downplaying the severity of illness that's there. I don't want to do that. It's not, I don't want to take diabetes lightly. It is very serious on both aspects. I've had patients who I've seen in crisis with super, super high blood sugars, 500, 600s, who start to really, have change in mental status, as well as the other end that drop down to 30, 20. And, it's very dangerous and very scary. So I understand where some of that fear of the regulation can be, as well as maybe some of the stigma of carrying a glucometer with you when you're going to be out, or having to take medicine, inject it, things like that, tests in a social setting. So one thing I'll say to that, and everyone's an individual, and how you feel about it is how you feel about it. And we don't, there's nothing right or wrong, but there's nothing wrong about it. Everyone's right. But it is a much greater known now. People are aware of it. And I don't think it's as perhaps rare or enigmatic, and perhaps there isn't as great a stigma about it. People see you taking medicine or see you testing, that is a sign that you care about your health. You're taking steps to overcome and to manage and to allow yourself to function. So
a very positive spin, very positive.
It's important. The other very important statement that we made this earlier about when we talked about control is it's important to understand that if you have this mindset of managing your own disease or process or diabetes, it doesn't have to be forever. This is something that is now, and it doesn't have to be all the time. In 6 months, in a year, with the proper changes, you might be not a diabetic. You might be someone who doesn't need any testing or any medicine to control their diabetes. You may still have to make good food choices and move your body every day, but you may not even be facing those things that today are concerns or issues. So that's a very important mindset to have, is that this might be a temporary condition.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that again goes back to being a good self-manager and understand the importance of taking control over, your own health and your own destiny. I know it's not easy to do, because if it was easy to do, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right. Simple, not easy.
Simple, not easy. Yeah. So there's a lot. So obviously there is a lot that we can do as individuals to control our diabetes, which will ultimately lead to better health, and the reversal even, which is pretty amazing that you could, because there's lots of things that cannot be reversed.
Right. Yeah. And I encourage you to ask your clinician, ask your healthcare provider, how do I change this? How do I not need insulin twice a day or once a day or 3 times a day? How do I not need this medicine? And because again, they can specify a process. Again, it may not be overnight, but you can come up with a plan together, because they clearly, they'll know you specifically, an individual, and start to go on that road, to really not only gain control, but really change the, really what could be a life-changing process, but change the process.
Does it ever feel to you as a doctor that sometimes your patients are actually too dependent on you, that they don't choose to take control?
I have some patients like that. Yeah, that sounds somewhat familiar. And whether it's the story they've been told previously, that once you start this medicine, you'll always be on this medicine, or once you go from not taking pills for diabetes to taking pills, you'll never stop. Once you go from taking pills to taking insulin, you'll always be on insulin. It may be part of the story they've heard in the past. It may be, like we talked about before, this reluctance or this inertia they have in the way they're expecting to eat on a daily basis. I need my French toast in the morning. I need my pancakes. I need my sandwich. I need my scoop of ice cream. So part of it is a story they've been told. Part of it is a story they tell themselves. And yeah, I'm happy to go in there and be a spoiler. Be like, well, this is not the story. The end of this story has yet to be written, and you're the author. So that's, I think, a very important message for people to hear, is that change is possible. Most of the time, I mean, there may be situations that are far enough down the road where you can still have some improvement. Every day is a new day, but to what extent, that damage has been done, I'm not really sure. But that's why it's good to ask the question: how do I get to the point where it can improve? If my A1C is 12, how do I make it 9? If it's 9, how do I make it 7? If it's 7, how do I make it 5? If I'm on insulin, how do I get off insulin? If I'm on pills, how do I get off the pills? So these are reasonable questions to ask. If all we did today was plant the seed to ask the question,
Right.
then I think that's fantastic.
So over the years, when I've facilitated workshops, I hear just what you said. Oh, once I get on the medicine, that's it. There's just going to be a kind of a straight road, a journey deeper and deeper into diabetes. But you clearly have a different thought on that. And yeah, I guess we are the author of our own story when it comes to diabetes. But you have to take that first step, which is, I think, even asking your doctor, I don't accept this. What can I do? I can't imagine any doctor who would not, help you get to the other side. I can't.
Yeah,
I just couldn't imagine.
Right. I would hope. I would hope so. And listen, if someone's tuning into this talk, it sounds like they already have some initiative. To learn, to educate themselves, to maybe make a change. And that's a great first step. You also might not have to ask your doctor first to decide to eat more fruits and vegetables. It's a step you can take yourself, and naturally there will be improvement in your health by doing that. Barring any allergies or anything like that.
Right. I mean, just to get started on your path to wellness is, eating more healthy. And again, if you're not sure what to do, you just dial in on YouTube. There's everything you need to know. Move your body a little bit more. And of course, you always have to be working with your doctor. Your doctor's your partner. And managing stress, we have to figure out what's going to work for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Individualize it. You do what you like. That's the thing we were talking about before. What's available out there in community groups, community outreach, church groups, whatever you participate in terms of community, and on the internet. You mentioned YouTube. There are plenty of sites that you can search for just gentle body movement, just getting started. There's so much available that they do make it easier and easier for you to do. And again, just start little, what you're capable of. It will help feed your sense of ability to be able to do something, and change that mindset of, well, I can't do that. Well, I can't do this. This is what happened. I can't do this. It's when you start to tell yourself the story that, well, maybe I can do a minute. Or 30 seconds. And after a week of doing a minute, maybe I can do 90 seconds or 2 minutes. And then you prove that you can.
So you really have to take the word can't out of your vocabulary And because if you really believe you can't do something, whatever that is, well, then you're just never going to get there. But let me say, of course, that we also have to share with everyone that one of the things that SCAN does offer is a diabetes self-management program. So we've talked a lot about self-management, and look, it starts with you, right? You got to talk to your doctor. You got to take the first step. And our diabetes self-management program, it's a 6-week program. It's free. And the thing is that you're convening in a group. And we talked again about the group dynamic, and there's a social element as well. And we offer these online as well as in person, because, in this world, got to be online also. And the whole point of it is we certainly are not replacing anything about your doctor, but we teach you some skills about understanding, well, how to plan better meals, how to move your body a little bit more, just how to be a self-manager so that maybe you will be able to conquer your diabetes. And maybe one day, like Dr. Rubin said, we won't even be having this conversation. So be part of your own solution. And since we do have everyone's email, I will email you some information. We have an online and we have an in-person workshop starting in about another week. So I'll let everyone know, and, you can share the information. But apparently with diabetes, you have a lot more control and that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing that we can take some control back here. I feel like a lot of people, again, for all my years of doing workshops, feeling frustrated, depressed, I have no control. But Dr. Rubin, I think that you're showing people you've got a lot of control, but now you have to exercise that control.
Right. That's right. And you'll feel it feeds on itself. The more you do, the more steps you take in a positive direction, the easier it is to continue to do that.
And the more you don't do something, I feel that keeps going too, but in the wrong direction. So it's what did we say before, Dr. Rubin? Choose wisely.
Choose wisely.
Choose wisely, because every choice has a consequence, and right. You want the good consequences. All right, let me just check the chat feature just in case we missed anything that we want to. Here's a late night snack. What might be some suggestions for a snack?
Well, that's a great question. Let me first say that you probably don't need to be eating at night. That's probably the best thing, or maybe have a glass of water. You're probably thirsty. If you're, a lot of times the body it confuses thirst for hunger. So first I would say try a glass of water or tea. But if you indeed have not eaten and your blood sugar is getting low and you really need something to eat, I would suggest fruit. Have some sliced apple, have a half of a banana, some carrots. Carrots and celery are wonderful. Lots of hydration, lots of fiber. There's a satisfying crunch to both of them that a lot of times people say, well, I can't just drink water. I need to chew. I need to eat something.
Yeah.
That's why they like crackers. That's why I say they. That's why I like chips.
Well, okay, but there is something about that's the satisfaction that comes with chewing. I totally understand that. Yeah.
And carrots and celery give you that crunch factor. And they're extremely healthy things to eat. And again, after you're going to eat at night, it's very important to brush your teeth afterwards, because that's probably a whole other conversation about
that's another one. Yeah,
oral hygiene, but it all is connected together. So,
but something. Here's another idea for those snacks at night: carrots and celery, or any time in the day. Well, again, be a good self-manager and have that prepared and ready at the ready, because the truth is, if you've got your healthy snacks, your good stuff there, you can reach for it easily, but if you don't, then it's a lot easier to reach for the bad stuff.
Yep. So true. They even make the bags of baby carrots.
Yeah,
buy it
exactly.
already prepped.
So prepare in advance. That's preparation is key. So
it's a great question. I'm sorry. I tried to turn it at the beginning, but it really is. It's a great question because it happens to all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. That late night snacking, by the way, not a good idea in general. I agree with you. So here, my mother-in-law has diabetes and she struggles with feelings of being frustrated and defeated at times. Are there tips or strategies for folks to help them not be overwhelmed by the relentless nature of diabetes?
Great question, and really pervasive. It's very common for not only diabetes but lots of different different issues, different disease models. I would suggest talking about it. Communication is huge. And just like we said that there are a lot of opportunities on the internet or in the community for exercise models and different programs, reach out to the community. And I'm sure there are groups. She's not the only one who feels this way. And again, whether it's a community group or church group or whatever she participates in, or online groups, talk about it. There are hundreds of thousands of other people that feel the same way.
Right.
And knowing you're not alone sometimes really gives you enough of that kind of motivation and togetherness and community to ease some of that burden of the process.
I think the group dynamic is very powerful. And it does remind you that you are absolutely not by yourself. There's someone to talk to.
Sure. And also recognizing that with some of these other changes over time, it may not be as much of a burden.
Right. Right. Start somewhere. That journey of 1,000 steps. Maybe it started right now when you tuned into this webinar with Dr. Rubin. All right, so we covered our questions. And Dr. Rubin, any final thoughts you want to share with everyone?
Well, just be safe, and don't get too bogged down in the details. Make little changes, as many days as you can. And if you don't get to it or you're not feeling it one day, if you can push through and do something, even if it was less than you did the day before, okay. Even if a day you don't have it, that's okay. The next day can be better. It's little steps. It's not linear. It can be, it can be a little cyclic, but as long as you're trending towards the positive, trending towards better health through your own choices and your own control of your health, then you're going to end up better than where you started.
Okay, very good advice. Well, Dr. Rubin, I want to say thank you very much for participating and indulging me in this conversation. We are recording, and so we will post this for people if you want to listen to it at a later time, or share it, or come back to it for some inspiration. All right. Thank you all for being with us today. We really appreciate you. Thank you, Dr. Rubin.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. Bye, everyone.